why do we have to go through this tumultuous journey to just accept who we are in our own heads, and then having to tell other people that I'd be disowned, that I wouldn't be welcomed home when I would go back to the UK. All the shame I felt, all the embarrassment, because this is what happens to people. And then they do have significant mental health issues.
Today's guest is my dear friend, Kaajal Nanda. Now residing in USA, Kaajal is a British author born and brought up in London, England. She works full-time in healthcare and has recently published her first book, a memoir of her coming out story. Yes, because you're gay, is intended to be a support to the LGBTQI plus community and a voice for those still fighting to live their truth. Kaajal's goal with her memoirs is to validate those struggling within the community, encourage allies and others to embrace all individuals, and to understand the challenges that the LGBTQI plus community can face. Kaajal will continue to work towards educating and opening the eyes of those less accepting of the community, including various cultures and religions. Welcome, Kaajal.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So, after reading that out and actually reading your book, which I highly recommend, but we'll go into that, what is one of the most courageous things that you have done?
So I mean, I have to say, just putting my story out there, it took me about 2 to 3 years to actually get it all together and write it, and being able to finally put it out there, you know, thinking about all the shame I felt, all the embarrassment, feeling like I was rebelling somewhat, and then talking about my family, talking about things people had said to me, you know, all these things that are so taboo in the Indian culture. Honestly felt it was a scary thing to actually put out there. So I would have to say, just finally saying, you know, whatever, this is my story and this is how I'm going to tell it, and there it is, it's out there. So that would be
courageous, definitely courageous.
Yeah, definitely in the Indian culture for sure.
So what took you on a journey of healthcare? Did this naturally fall into place, or is this from your experiences?
Essentially, I always say I grew up going to see the eye doctor. So I have a lazy eye. My eye used to cross in. I've had, at this point, 4 eye surgeries. And I just became so curious of, you know, what is wrong with me? What's wrong with my eyes? I have constant double vision, so I'm always seeing 2 of everything. I think it just kind of naturally happened. That's just what I wanted to do. So I'm now an orthoptist. So I specialize in eye movements and visual development. You know, I was just so interested in it that, that's just where I naturally went.
That's great. And I can understand why you'd want to understand more about that. Yes.
Yeah, for sure. And then doing that, I then realized how many other eye conditions there are, and you know, then I just was just fascinated by it, and here we are 7.5 years later. So
wow, excellent. What a journey.
Yeah, for sure.
You have had a few challenges even as a youngster, and was diagnosed with vitiligo and a lazy eye, as you've just explained. How did you navigate this at such a young age?
So I would say, and I do talk about this not too much in my book, but my mom played a huge role in helping me deal with that. My vitiligo was much worse than it is now. Was pretty much covered in it, my whole midsection. Honestly, I was surprised looking back now, how few kids mentioned it, brought it up. It honestly wasn't brought up a huge amount, but there were instances that did make me feel that something is wrong with me. And my mom did a phenomenal job of helping me to realize that there's nothing wrong and I shouldn't be ashamed of it. Which of course was its own journey, because people tell you those things, but you just think, oh, you're just saying that, you're my mom, or, you know, you're just trying to make me feel better about it. But I did always begin to feel like this is who I am. We tried to kind of get rid of it. I did UV treatment when I was about 12, which, you know, it reached a point I got to the end of the treatment and it was the decision of, do we continue with it and it could go the other way, or do we just say, okay, this is as good as it's going to get and we're just going to be happy with that. And my mum very much involved me in those decisions, you know, despite me being a child. So I think just her including me in as much as she could, given my age, just helped me kind of understand more what was going on. And then she just helped me build up this confidence, which you just wouldn't expect, I feel like, in a child of that age. You know, now when I see kids of that age, 12 and younger, I just kind of feel like I had this confidence where, you know, kids just almost didn't want to say anything.
Yes.
Because it just became, listen, this is who I am. These are things I can't change. And at this point, it's nice because I don't want to change it. It's truly been a huge part of building my character, building my confidence, and just being proud of who I am, essentially.
That's really courageous and such an inspiration, really. And it's great that your mom really encouraged you.
Yeah, I mean, she what was nice is she could empathize so much because she has her own like skin condition and stuff. So she had been through a similar thing. And so talking about her own experience really helped me and almost made me want to, you know, be like her in essence.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that definitely helped.
So you struggled with your sexuality and dated men. What was your thought process behind that? Did you think, let me try this out and maybe, okay, it's a phase or something? Tell me about your thought process there.
As you know, I talk from a 7-year-old's perspective, because I wanted to set the scene so that people could understand, you know, as a child, you're not actually making a choice. You know, so many people think this is a choice, you know, so I wanted to just show from that perspective what I was feeling. At that point, it was, oh, I kind of like women, but no, that's wrong. I'm not supposed to. Everyone around me likes men, looks at the male actors in the movies and so on. So it felt like I was wrong. Something was wrong with me. So I just pushed it down so much that I truly began to believe that was true. You know, I just, I don't really like women. I like men. And then as I got older, it became almost like if I do this, if I just need to be with a man to help me realize that that's what I want. But it kept escalating. Initially it was, okay, well, let me swipe on the apps. And the thing is, I can point out an attractive man. I can happily say, oh yeah, he's really cute, or, you know.
Yeah, you can appreciate him.
Right. So that was another reason for me feeling like, okay, so what's the problem? I obviously feel some, but of course it's not attraction per se. And then it was, I can't differentiate between attraction and just appreciating. So then it was, okay, let me go on these dates. That will help me realize that that's what I want. And a lot of the time, it was funny. I just, they wanted to, we're at dinner and they're discussing what we should do after. Should we go here? Should we go do this? And I'm just like, no, I don't want to do that. So a lot of the times I would go along with it, put myself in a position I didn't want to be in, and just go with it. On occasion, I would say, like, okay, yeah, I'm down, I'm tired, or make up some excuse. But for the most part, I would just go because I felt bad, and I felt like maybe I'll just spend a bit more time. Maybe I just need a bit more time to convince myself, or maybe I need to go on a couple more dates. Maybe that will help. And then it became, maybe I just need to have sex with this guy. Maybe that will help me. Maybe that's what I need to, that will be the final push. I'll just sleep with them and then it will be great. And then that obviously didn't go so well. And I just, any time anything got physical to any extent, actually, I was immediately uncomfortable. I was trying to stop it. And initially I thought, this is because I'm Indian and we're not supposed to be doing this. And
yes, regardless, whatever sex is.
Right, exactly. And so that was a huge, huge part of it, was me just thinking, well, it would be preferred if I had sex after marriage. So it was a lot of that, of just, it's because I want to follow the rules. I want to do what I should be doing, and I know I shouldn't be doing this yet. And then eventually it finally clicked for me, because I tried to get very physical with someone who I genuinely had really liked for a while, and I couldn't do it. And at that point it was, okay, if you can't do it with him, then you
rethink this.
Yeah. So it was a long, oh my gosh, I think I can't even tell you how many dates I went on with guys. And
hey, I read the book, I know.
yeah, it was a rough time for sure.
Yeah, can you imagine?
Yeah, it just one after another, just awful kisses, I will say.
Okay. I'll take you for it.
Yeah, that was not great. But yeah, that was kind of the process.
So I know one's mental health can be affected when you're not being true to yourself. You're hiding. Did you find this? Did this affect you?
Very much so. And I don't think I realized that. So when I think back now, and it's funny how much you realize and that's why I found writing this book so cathartic, because I was reflecting on things back from when I was 12. I mean, I was 12 and I don't talk about any of this, but I was 12 and I had started, I mean, I say cutting myself. I was too scared.
Gosh.
I was not courageous at this point, but I was like scratching myself basically. So not necessarily causing any harm. But I was doing that at 12, and looking back, I didn't realize why I was doing that. It just felt good. It was a release. And I did that from 12 to 17. At 17, I made the active decision to stop. I told myself I need to stop. This is, we don't need to do this. And so, and then the point at which I made a decision to actually start therapy, I was, I think, around 23, 24. And that was, even at that point, I didn't really think I had any diagnosis, but I just noticed things about myself that I didn't want to continue. And then she diagnosed me with anxiety, and I thought, I'm not an anxious person. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just generally, I'm pretty laid back. Like, I don't really let things get to me. So I was kind of just a bit confused by that. And then about a year or two later, I realized that I had gone about 3 or 4 months and I had not cooked a single meal.
Wow.
Yeah. And I love to cook. Like, I love to just come up with random different things and that sort of thing. And I also just find it very therapeutic. So yeah, I was just thinking, and I was like, hold on a minute. I mean, the amount of money I spent on Uber Eats, it's honestly
Gosh.
tragic.
Mm.
And and then I started to feel uncomfortable because people would ask me like, "Oh, what are you making for dinner tonight?" Or like, oh, just random conversations, getting to know
Yes.
people, like, oh, do you like to cook? And I'm like, I can't even answer these questions. And I would just, sometimes I would just make stuff up, or I would just be like, oh, I don't know, I'm thinking I'm going to eat out tonight. Like it was a once a week thing. Meanwhile, it was every day. And so that was really my first realization that something was very wrong. And I have a lot of self-awareness. So for me, that kind of just came out of nowhere. And I thought that I had experienced depression when I was younger, but this hitting me was, oh my gosh, something I just cannot describe well enough. And I've tried to describe it in the book. But I think until you actually feel that, you just don't know.
Yeah, because something like that's an experience, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think a lot of my family reading the book and realizing, they didn't know about that for me, that period. And they've just been shocked. And I've just said, I truly have felt on many occasions it's just easier to just not live anymore. And when you think logically, you think, well, actually, life's not that bad. It's really not. But when you have that depression cloud just sitting above you and you can't get rid of it. As I mentioned in my book as well, my shower curtain was
Yes.
extremely, extremely, these are the things, it was so grimy. These are the things, you're so embarrassed to talk about in the moment. And now I can laugh about it. But
Yes.
that I was eating cereal out of Tupperware containers. My dishes were piled so high. I would rather die than wash the dishes.
Gosh.
I would,
Dark times, for sure.
Yeah. And that's the kind of thing where, I mean, you just can't describe that to someone. You can't explain that to someone because that just sounds so absurd.
And how did you finally get the help? Because there is a lot of help out there. Did you feel comfortable enough for asking for help?
So my therapist is phenomenal. And once I had some realization, I just told her, I've just realized I haven't cooked for 4 months. And she suggested medication at that point. Because, I was already doing the things, I was going to therapy regularly. I was working out regularly. I was taking care of myself in other aspects. And of course, wanting or going on medication is another taboo thing.
Definitely.
So I was like, no, I can't do that. That's messing with my head. That's not right. And of course, she used the classic, would you tell a diabetic to not take insulin? Or, if you had high blood pressure, would you not take the medication? And I did go away and think about it. Like, I had to take a week or two to kind of come around to the idea. And I did agree. And it truly has been the thing that has changed my life, honestly. And I do think it's sad how many people won't take it because of the fear of it's messing with me, when truly it's getting you back to where you need to be.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's
so
brilliant. I'm so pleased you did. And there is a lot more help out there now. So if anybody is listening, please do reach out. Never feel alone. There is always, always someone there that can help you.
Absolutely. And I think people's awareness in general has improved. So even just telling, a friend or telling a family member can truly help a lot. Even the journey of the medication, it's trial and error. It's trial and error, and that in itself was a whole journey in itself. Feeling worse, feeling just awful. But and they warn you of those things, and I was sure to tell someone, okay, I'm changing my medication. Like, beware. I might start to feel worse. I might start to feel more suicidal, and so on. It was definitely a journey, but
well, I'm for one glad you got the help. And
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So what was it like when you finally did accept yourself for who you were?
So it's tough to give an exact answer, just because it was it happened in steps that were actually, there was a lot of time between each step. I told my mum early on. I waited a while before I told my brother. I waited a while again before I told my dad. And for me, my dad was the hardest one to tell. So I would say the point at which I felt free to an extent was after I told my dad. The weight that was lifted off of my shoulders, it genuinely felt like somebody had just taken something off of me. Even his reaction was great, better than I would have expected. And of course, he needed his time to further understand and come around to the idea. But he told me he will always love me, and that for me was enough to just take that weight off and say, you know what, this is who I am, and now you know that, and you are my father, and now you know my truth. And that in itself was just so freeing, just so relieving. And once I knew that my immediate family, my parents and my siblings, were behind me, I was so much freer.
Yes, and that's what you call unconditional love.
Yeah, absolutely. And to think now that I was so concerned that I'd be disowned, that my dad wouldn't want to see me again, that I wouldn't be welcomed home when I would go back to the UK. It seemed,
this is all because you can't, you told them that you were gay, your sexuality,
right? And it seems, and it seems so silly in the sense that it shouldn't be that way. And it is that way, and it's sad, and that's a huge thing that I try to portray in the book, of just people need to realize that this is the struggle that we go through. For what? Why do we have to go through this tumultuous journey to just accept who we are in our own heads, and then having to tell other people? I just wanted to kind of put that out there, that we should be more accepting, because this is what happens to people. And then they do have significant mental health issues. And it's just, you don't see any straight person going through those things.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. And it's just, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
What would you say to anyone that is confused in understanding and navigating their sexuality?
I would say, number one, getting a therapist is a huge saving grace, even just to help you navigate any feelings, because it can be hard to sit with yourself and try to understand yourself without having that neutral person there to help. So that would be my number one thing. Number two, I would say it's okay. It's okay to feel how you feel. It's okay to not be sure. It's okay to like men and women. It's okay to go through the process, go through the stages. And it doesn't, of course, yes, we all want to be ourselves, be our true selves as soon as we can. But sometimes we just have to go through the stages so that we understand ourselves better. And, some of us come out at 15 and some of us come out at 40, and it's a process, but that's okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. So tell me more about the message, intentions behind the book, and who is the book for?
Initially, the book was for me. It was for my catharsis. It was for my processing. And then as I was writing it, it became for anyone who was going through something similar. And then the more I got into my family and the struggle of coming out and everyone else's impact on me, it became for those people, the people that didn't quite understand, is this real? Is this a choice? How did this happen? Did I have something to do with it? Are you gay because of me? Then it became for those people to help them understand. And even for allies, we have allies, but they don't necessarily understand the journey itself. And so it also became for them, and it became for people who want to understand. They want to change their mindset, their mentality, their views on the entire community. It became for them, just to help people understand. And I wanted to make it humorous because
it definitely is. I like that. I love that about it, actually. Yes.
Because I wanted it to be lighthearted. I don't want to be kind of trying to be so strict about it and so serious. That's just not who I am. So I wanted to be able to relate to people and meet them where they're at, and just help them understand and know that it's okay. It's okay to feel how you feel.
Yeah. And it's a brilliant read. Definitely highly, highly recommend it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Describe a moment when you felt most attacked for being gay. Can you just unpack that a little bit, please?
Yeah. So it's ironic, really. I went to help my friend who she was going to put up a Christmas tree for her parents at her parents' house, and I said, yeah, sure, I'll come along, I'll help out. So there's me going with good intentions, trying to help, and her dad came home. Now, these are people who live out of the city. So anyone who lives out of the city and they're more in the suburbs are you just should expect this. And I guess I just didn't in my naivety. But anyway, so he asked me if I have a boyfriend. And I just said no. I wasn't going to get into it. I said no. And my friend said, she's gay. And I was like, because I just knew it was going to start something. And he said, he kind of smirked and he said, you're joking, right? And then I looked up because I was kind of in a box. So I looked up and I said, no, I'm gay. And he was just like, you're joking, right? And I was like, no, I'm gay. That's it. Yeah. So then it turned into probably about 2.5 hours of on and off, him talking about various things. At the time, it was kind of more during COVID, and we had I can't remember what her role was, but her name is Dr. Rachel Levine. She was kind of very much involved in the health, she was like one of the governors here, and she's transgender. And he brought that up, and he said, well, I mean, like, that's fine. Gay is one thing, but this he is just ugly. Like, and we have to see that every day on the TV. We have to see him come up. And I said, her.
Well, he has a choice. He does not need to watch it.
Exactly.
He's still choosing to.
Right. Yeah. And he said, no, him. And I said, no, her. And the thing was also, you can find someone ugly or pretty or whatever you want. I mean, I personally hate when people use the word ugly to refer to people, but nonetheless, I just kind of explained to him that not everyone's going to think that you're attractive. It doesn't matter if you're gay, straight, transgender, whatever you are, and it was just, honestly, that whole, and a lot of people said to me, why don't you just leave? Why don't you just leave the house? And that is what I talk about at the very end of my book. Because my view was, no, why do I have to leave the house? Because I don't want him to think he has this power over me, that he has made me feel so uncomfortable that I'm going to just walk out. Because for me, I was like, no, I'm going to stand here. I'm going to stand my ground, and I'm going to say what I feel. And if even an ounce of something I say gets into your head, that would make me very happy. Towards the end of that encounter, he said to me laughingly, he said, I hope that one day you'll look back at this and laugh. And I said,
at his expense, no doubt.
Right. And I said, I hope that one day you look back at this and you learn something. It was my first experience of that. It was my first experience of being attacked in who I am. It was definitely not okay. He asked me if I was still going to stay friends with his daughter, and I was just like, listen, she is not you and you are not her, and she is very accepting of who I am, and of course I am, so yeah.
So how can you help someone understand and navigate these changing experiences like that? What would you say?
It's sad because I think there's such a spectrum of people, and for me, he is way over this side. There are some people where it's sad. I don't think that someone like him would change his perspective.
Absolutely, I have to agree with you there.
Yeah, but those people that are kind of not so far on that end of the spectrum, I think, to be less ignorant. If they're open to hearing you out and taking the time to actually listen and understand, and ultimately that's what my dad did. To me, growing up, he was a huge homophobe, and that's why I was so worried to tell him.
And that comes without the culture being Asian, Indian.
Exactly. And he now, I mean, incredible. He's so supportive. He's so accepting of my now fiance. He's been incredible. Just loves her. it's just such a change. So, I think that if people are more accepting and open to having their minds changed, those are the ones that we can share our story with and kind of help them and guide them. And it does help, though, to have close relation who is gay or part of the LGBTQI plus community, because that, I think, makes people change their perspective, makes people change their mind. But people don't realize they all know someone who is in that community.
So what has been the best thing about writing the book and getting it published?
Seeing the impact it has had on especially my family, my extended family, cousins who actually didn't even know I was gay.
Okay.
So many people have reached out to me and shown me such support. I've been honestly blown away and overwhelmed by it. But a lot of that has come from them actually bothering to pick up the book. And so for me, hearing about even the older generation, even if they're curious about it, if they read the blurb, if they do read some part of it, or they read all of it, just knowing that I've evoked some curiosity in the older generation has been phenomenal. And that in itself is that first stepping stone. So,
Definitely.
because they're curious, they want to know. And that's why it's out there. So.
That's brilliant. What have you found to be your biggest learning around the Indian culture and being gay? Pretty loaded question there.
Yeah, that is a loaded question. It's, I would say, and maybe I'm one of the lucky ones, but I would say that realizing that you can get a better reaction than you would imagine. You always imagine it worse in your head. And I think one thing I have learned more recently is the difference between the Indian reaction and a more religious reaction is that when it comes to culture is more easily bendable. Religion is so strict and so
I'd have to agree with you there. Those are my experiences too.
Yeah. Whereas the Hindu religion actually doesn't have any views necessarily, as far as I'm aware, on being gay. There's nothing in any book that talks about that. It's very much be a good person, be a good human. So I think for me, it's just knowing that, yes, culture and understanding. I mean, my grandmother is so happy for me.
Yes. Well, that's phenomenal.
Yeah. And she's a very religious woman, so it's clear that this doesn't come from religion. This comes from society. This comes from culture. And so for me, I would say that would be the biggest thing is it's always worse in your head and you just need to do it and it'll work out. It will work out.
Yeah, definitely. Have you had much response from the Indian culture about your book? Because there's some scenes in there that I thought, oh, that's a bit risky. And that's me reading it as a gay woman.
I thought the same thing when I was writing it. You know what? It's so funny because the decision for me to write those things down, obviously I agree with you. I was like, this is really risky. I don't know if I should do this. And I just thought, people want your whole story. They don't want you to hide anything. They don't, because it's not a good book then, right? It's not good when you're not telling the whole story. If you want to tell your story, then tell your story. And so it's interesting. The feedback that I've had, either people just haven't specifically mentioned those parts, which is fine, or they make the point to say, that was really awful. And, and that person's a dick. And and so on and so on. So I think it actually has evoked more sympathy and empathy as opposed to judgment, which was, of course, the risk of people saying, oh, you really shouldn't have put that in there, And I'm saying, this is my story, and that's a significant part of my story. Yeah, it's been interesting for sure.
No, you love to travel, and if you could go anywhere, where would it be if you haven't already been?
My next trip is South Africa. I'm heading there for my 30th birthday.
Lovely.
But very much on my list, and this has been on there for a long time, is South America. I really want to do Chile, Argentina, Peru at some point. So I have not been to South America yet. So that's very much on my to-do list, and I'm closer now, so might as well go down there.
Excellent. So I've got to ask you this. Why cheddar cheese? You might want to give the listener some context around that.
Cheddar. So it's funny. I love food, first of all. I love cheese. I thought up the name, and so I was like searching, and so Cheddar is my puppy, and I went to see him, and he's just a white little fluff ball, and I just looked at him and I was like, yeah, Cheddar definitely works. Yeah, he's great.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, I would have brought him on here, but he's gone for a long walk, so
okay. Yeah, that's great. Yes. So having read your book and the raw and the honesty of it, I highly, highly recommend it to anyone that wants to own their own sexuality, but also those that are on the receiving end, like family and friends that don't know how to navigate. So I highly recommend it for anyone. The insights are phenomenal for any individual to read. So do get the book. The links will all be in the show notes. I highly recommend it.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. What resources do you recommend, tools, daily tips to anyone that wants to start to overcome prejudice you've experienced, reactions, people not wanting to know, they may be struggling with their sexuality? What would you say?
So I would say accepting yourself first is key. There's just one person, a friend or someone that you trust 100%, because having that help you need that. You need someone, and whether that be a therapist or a friend, to just help you accept yourself. And I think that once you accept yourself and you're happy with who you are, you can face anything, and you can face, not to sound so cliche, but having that confidence within yourself really helps the coming out process, I have found, because the more confidence I gained around it, the more I didn't care. I didn't care about the reaction. I didn't care about the response, because it just didn't matter anymore. I'm happy with who I am, and I'm happy that I have the support network that I do have. But anyone beyond that, to me, was, hey, if you like it, great. If you don't like it, I'm okay with it, because I'm happy.
Absolutely. Yes.
And so I think having that security within yourself is key before doing anything else.
So where can the listeners find you online, get your book? What's your website?
So my website is my full name, so kaajalnanda.com. I do have links on there straight to Amazon where you can buy the book. And then I just talk about, give updates on any events that I have. I don't have anything coming up at the moment, but I'm working on doing a couple of book launches in the surrounding area. So I put updates in there too. And then future books, we'll see. I'll post them on there as well. But yeah, so kaajalnanda.com.
Excellent. And I look forward to the next books.
Yep.
And follow your journey for sure. Thank you for sharing your courageous, insightful journey and wisdom with us today. And by doing so, you have helped so many others, and acknowledge you for doing the work on yourself so that you can make the much needed difference to the world. I really acknowledge you for that.
Thank you.
Kaajal Nanda.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. So my final question to you is, because we are Create the Courage to be Fearless podcast, what is your definition of courage?
I would say courage is knowing what is good for you, whether that's progressing with something or taking a step back and following through with that. Taking a step back is definitely key to courage when needed.